Good morning, security gang, and welcome back to the CyberHub Podcast. James Azar here. I'm the host and Chief Information Security Officer by trade. Thank you all for tuning in this morning. We've got a packed Monday morning show for all of y'all. You know, we got snow in Georgia over the weekend, and what I mean by snow, I mean it was like under an inch where I live, and it was predominantly because of the low temperatures turned into ice. And the reason I say that is because I grew up in Colorado, where snow is actual snow, and a snow day. I mean, Colorado today has way more snow days than I ever remember, and fellow Coloradans will agree with that one. However, in Georgia, an inch of snow shuts everything down. Um, as such was the weekend, which led to a lot of reading, a lot of kind of coming to facts and so forth, and it was nice and exciting and good family time. And I hope wherever you were in the country and the world, you got to enjoy some time with your loved ones, and really just take some time to unwind, because we live in a state of constant information. And in the state of constant information, there are lots of distractions that distract us from focusing on what really matters most. And what matters most is not X, Instagram, Facebook, work. All of that is to support, give you a little bit of time away. What matters most is the people you care for the most. And I hope you got time to do that. We've got a packed show this morning, folks. We've got a lot to talk about. More information coming from Poland on the Russian cyber attack, including ICS devices that were bricked in the Poland grid attack, mass breaches tied to Bumble and Match, a ransomware hit pinned on a SonicWall cloud backup compromise, urgent Avanti Zeroday. We haven't said Avanti all year. February 2nd, 2026, we start under active exploit. Then we'll hit on AI tool flaw, Coupang's breach probe, record illicit crypto flows, and exposed MongoDB extortion, Johnson controlled product bugs, and a China IP theft conviction, all on this morning's show. And if you missed our story this weekend at cyberhubpodcast.com, Infiltrated from Within was the title around the North Korea IT scams, but also the insider threats, whether they're geopolitical, like what happened to our friends over at Coinbase in India, or even more systematic as to what happened here in Emory University, where the daughter of one of the executors of the IRGC was a medical professional here at Emory University, never fails to just understand how much people fail at background checks. So the person whose dad chants death to America, his daughter was living in America, in Atlanta, Georgia, treating cancer patients in America. Yeah, she's been fired and hopefully deported. All right. All of that on this morning's show, but that's available at cyberhubpodcast.com. Go check it out. I've got my double espresso this morning. Coffee cup cheers. Fantastic. All right. If you've lived under a rock, then MoltBook will sound really something you go, what? But the MoltBook AI vulnerability has kept every Slack group and every WhatsApp group I'm a part of very interesting this weekend. And like I said, with the weather, it really kind of paid off. So the prompt tooling exposure, think of Chat GPT, but really true AI assistant. The flaw in the MoltBook AI is exposing project artifacts and even environment variables to unauthorized access, turning what looks like a note-taking AI helper into a data exfiltration path with the leakage of prompts, API keys, and even data set snippets that map to real customer data, which is significant. Disabling the vulnerable plugin and integrations across managed browsers until the vendor patches the build is verified in your staging tenant will go a long way. Now, there was a lot of news about this over the weekend and what it actually means. Here's what this is. Anytime someone develops something, and MoltBook was developed by a lone developer, right? There's going to be security flaws, and you ought to vet them. You ought to practice zero trust when you can. That'll go a long way there. Now, again, this was launched by Matt Shillett of Octane AI. And we discovered that AI, now known MoltBook, enabled OpenClaw-powered AI agents to post, comment, and inform submults like Emergence kind of posting its own Reddit, right? And it did develop on its own. And one of the things here is uh, they were kind of trying to break some of the controls here. So, I mean, from it's Skynet. MoltBook turned into Skynet in like a matter of a few weeks. It's crazy. Um, but again, shows you AI does need guardrails. But the question is, who sets those guardrails? Government or industry? Um, that's still yet to be seen. Okay, we'll move to data breach fallout with Bumble and Match user data potentially exposed. The company reports are indicating that Bumble and Match owned platforms have faced data compromise incidents touching profiles, contact info, and potentially messaging metadata. The exact contact varies by platform, but the common thread is rich, sensitive PII at massive scales, which could lead to targeted harassment, extortion, and even credential reuse attacks against users, including your employees. We all have single employees. And so if they're part of that, that's something to pay attention to, folks. You want to push a company-wide kind of credential hygiene reset for any staff using personal email on these services or even reusing like passwords, and force refresh on corporate SSO sessions this week for any of those users if you know who they are. And again, I would probably talk to HR before you go ahead and kind of try to force anything there to make sure that HR is on board with what you're trying to get done there. Marquis Software is blaming their breach on a SonicWall cloud backup hack. Marquis is a huge financial services company that services some of the biggest financial institutions in the country and the world. Marquis says its intrusion stemmed from a compromised SonicWall cloud backup, weaponizing the security vendor's trust channel to reach internal assets. Whether that's fully accurate or part of the extortion theater, it does underscore the nightmare of security tools as a supply chain risk. The control plane abuse here via the vendor hosted backups or even the management councils is something to be of great concern for many of us. To mitigate this, what I would do is put all security vendor management and backups access behind a per vendor priv access broker or just-in-time accounts, even device posture checks, and note standing API keys if you can afford to do so. In some cases, that's not a possibility, but creating, if you're using a SASE, I like to create like admin SASE accounts where you go in and you do just-in-time access. You get access to that network, which allows you to log in as an admin. Go a long way to helping. So Coupang in South Korea just cannot seem to catch a break here. Their CEO, Harold Rogers, being questioned by police, and the things there are escalating. South Korea's e-commerce giant Coupang, think of Amazon in South Korea, is facing intensified scrutiny as police question the acting CEO over the breach that reportedly touched customer data at scale. Now they're doing a follow-on fraud against shoppers and BEC attempts against merchants using legitimate order details. And again, the South Koreans here are looking for negligence. They're trying to identify what this is, and it's really awkward what they're doing. I got to tell you, not a big fan of it. I mean, although the person who was behind this breach did Ted his computer, and Ted 2, there's a scene where Ted and Mark Wahlberg kind of smashed the laptop and throw it in Boston Bay. Rogers has been summoned by police twice, did not appear. Police launched a task force on the Coupang breach in December of this year. Investigators are also probing a former Coupang employee of Chinese descent, who they say played a key role in the breach itself. They're trying to understand all of it there as well. And that's going to be significant across the board. And again, when you're going through an event, before you declare it's a breach, having lawyers in the room and making sure you're putting out the right information, that can't be stressed enough. That's your job as a CISO. Get with the CEO, make sure no statements are being made, make sure nothing's being said unless you physically approve it. All right. We'll continue with this Poland power grid breach, that now had devices bricked in the strike, apparently. Investigators say that the December operation against Poland's distributed energy sector deliberately bricked field ICS devices, disrupting telemetry and control at dozens of sites, consistent with destructive tradecraft we've seen from Russia-aligned actors. The point there wasn't data theft. It was really operational pain and signaling. Again, low-cost, high-impact attacks on peripheral RTUs and gateways that sit outside your big SCADA. Introduce unidirectional gateways like data diodes for outbound telemetry at any remote sites, so command path can't be abused in reverse, or get Cloak. How about that? Cloak, Kloch. Get that there. My last roll, we deployed that. Stuff is gold. Gold, I tell you. Get it now. All right. Especially if you're in energy. Illicit crypto flows hit a record 158 billion to suspected wallets. Blockchain analytics tallies is showing record inflows to mixers, high-risk exchanges, and even scam wallets. This is money from ransomware, big butchering, account takeovers, romance scams, all the stuff you see. The key risks here is your business being tricked into payouts that traverse sanctioned or even tainted path, triggering compliance and clawback hell. You want to require pre-approved named wallets and allow list for any crypto or crypto adjacent payouts with any real-time chain risk checks before you release the money in order to make sure you do that. Again, this is a 145% increase by TRM Labs, who noted that it comes despite the illicit activity share of the total on-chain volume actually falling slightly from 1.3. I mean, this was 64 billion last year. It's 158 billion this year. Just showing you how much crypto is getting hit, right? Huge, huge hacks, scams, ransomware. It's there, right? It's there. They're making money off of it. 158 billion's worth. These are not sustainable numbers for an economy to sustain, for any economy to sustain. Something has to be done, and has to be done sooner rather than later, because this has some significant effects. All right. Let's get into some vulnerabilities. I haven't said Avanti's name in a few months, but I knew it was coming at some point. The endpoint manager for Avanti CVE 2026-1281 and 1340 both was a CVSS score of 9.8 are bugs that are being described as code injection issues that could lead, that could be exploited by an unauthenticated attacker to achieve remote code execution, and it is under active exploitation. Avanti did ship fixes for both of these exploits that impact the EPMM flaws used for remote code execution and authentication bypass against the device management servers. Attackers love MDM because it's a distribution host straight into the endpoints. Fleet-wide compromises at riskier profile tampering and even covert app sideloads. Patch now, then temporarily geofence and rate limit the EPMM admin portal and enforce admin SSO with hardware keys until logs show the system is clean. Remember, the Chinese love Avanti, so they love living off the land. You want to make sure you're actually cleaning the environment before you. All right, so sorry, folks. Here we had a little issue with MongoDB with this story here coming up, so I do apologize. Let me get back on track here with this MongoDB. Fat fingered this one here on a live show, so you know how it is. So attackers continue sweeping for internet exposed MongoDB with no authentication or weak configs, scraping data, then eliminating pay or we leak. Even when companies have backups, the PR and regulatory drags is hurting. The data theft risk here, then extort and shadow IT and stale test clusters are significant. To mitigate this risk, enforce a cloud level IP allow list, mandatory SCRAM authentication and DLS for every MongoDB deployment, auto quarantine any instance that fails any sort of baseline check. We'll continue to Johnson Controls, where they're releasing a severe SQL injection vulnerability there in their building control software, in their building systems. Sorry. So this is CVE 2025-26385, and it's got a perfect 10 score here. Multiple CVEs, though, are attached to this one. So you want to pay close attention. This would allow attackers to enable remote manipulation or even data theft in some of your smart buildings. So building automation as an enterprise, backdoor HVAC and access systems often touch your core network. And from there, they can move into your system and cause some significant damage. You want to disable remote cloud access features on affected models until the firmware is updated and your team validates rule sets in a lab setting there, because that's going to be significant as well, folks. But again, SQL injection that is impacting multiple vulnerabilities there. And again, a bunch of different CVEs, 2025-26385 impacts a whole bunch of different products. So take sure to check this out. All right. And our final story here for the show today, a former Google engineer has been convicted for exporting AI tech to China. A U.S. court convicted an ex-Googler who it was an engineer for exfiltrating proprietary IT accelerators and compilers know-hows to China while still employed by Google, highlighting the collision of IP theft and national security policy, with the risk here being insider-led source and design leakage that neutralizes your competitive mode overnight. You want to turn on your repo-level DLP with high-value code watch list and require just-in-time approvals for any bulk exports or even cloning of sensitive repos in your environment. The man here, his name was Lin Wei Ding. He was a former software engineer at Google, worked, according to prosecutors, between May of 22 and April of 23. He stole over 2,000 pages of confidential AI-related material from Google and uploaded them to his personal Google Cloud account. Then he was selling those to China-based technologies and even negotiating a CTO role for one of them in China. Following an 11-day trial, he was convicted on 7 counts of economic espionage and 7 counts of trade secret theft, each carrying a maximum imprisonment sentence of 10 to 15 years. No sentence has been announced, but 7 counts, 10 to 15 years. I'd say, give him consecutive 10-year sentences for every count. That's 140 years. That'll be a good kind of thing. And that's why we talked about over the weekend, infiltrated from within. Understand the insider threats can do a lot more damage than anything on the outside. That's it for our show this morning. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great week. Have a great rest of your day. Sorry for the mishap there. Most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.